The cul-de-sac looked perfect on paper: wide sidewalks, manicured lawns, American flags swaying on porches. That was what sold me when I moved here with my 10-year-old daughter, Emma. After my wife passed 2 years ago, I needed a fresh start. A place safe enough where Emma could ride her bike, climb trees, and grow up with some semblance of normal childhood. But picture-perfect neighborhoods often hide their cracks. And ours had one big crack. Her name was Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Her son, Tyler, was 12, bigger than Emma, meaner too. I'd caught him throwing rocks at her once, calling her weird because she liked sketching instead of playing soccer with the other kids. I let it slide, telling myself kids grow out of cruelty. But I had no idea how far he could go. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. I was on the porch, fixing the screen door, when Emma asked if she could go climb the old oak by the creek. It was her favorite spot, our little corner of peace where she could sketch in her notebook. I kissed her head, told her to be back in an hour, and went back to my work. An hour passed, then 2. By the time the sun was sinking low, my gut clenched. Emma never pushed curfew. I grabbed my flashlight and jogged toward the creek. That's when I heard it, her voice. Small, strained, echoing through the trees. "Daddy, Daddy." The beam of my flashlight cut through the dark. My heart stopped. Emma was tied to the oak tree with thick yellow rope, her wrists raw from struggling. Her hair was tangled, face streaked with tears. "Emma." I dropped to my knees, fumbling with the knots. She sobbed into my chest the moment I freed her. "Who did this?" I asked, though my voice already shook with rage. She hiccuped through tears. "Tyler. Tyler Whitfield. He said I was a freak. He said I needed to stay here until I learned my place." My blood boiled. Tyler, the Whitfield's golden boy, always smirking behind his mother's shadow. Emma's words replayed in my head, but one stuck like a knife. She whispered, trembling. "He told me, if I didn't stop drawing in the park, he'd make me call my dad his dad." I stiffened. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen's husband, Colonel Daniel Whitfield, a retired Delta Force operator. The kind of man who carried himself like he owned the ground under his boots. He was rarely home, but when he was, people said even the HOA board tiptoed. That night, holding Emma close, fury simmered under my skin. A boy tying up my daughter was bad enough, but the looming shadow of his father, a man trained for war, turned that fury into something darker. This wasn't just about bullying. It was about power, and I knew in that moment, this wasn't over. Sunday morning came heavy. Emma slept curled against me on the couch, still shaken from last night. I hadn't told a soul yet. Not the cops, not the neighbors. My first instinct was to storm over to the Whitfields and drag Tyler by the collar to apologize. But then I pictured Karen, her perfect teeth behind that thin smile, and Daniel's reputation whispering through the neighborhood like a warning. By mid-morning, the knock came anyway. 3 sharp raps. I opened the door, and there she stood. Karen Whitfield, pressed khaki shorts, crisp white blouse, her HOA badge clipped like it was a sheriff's star. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "We need to talk about your daughter." My jaw clenched. "We do, but not in the way you think." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, children roughhouse." Tyler didn't mean anything. But Emma was trespassing, you see. That oak tree by the creek? HOA property. Children aren't supposed to loiter there. I couldn't believe her. Trespassing? My daughter was tied to a tree. By your son. Karen's smile froze, just for a flicker. Then she leaned in, voice low. "Careful how you phrase that, Mr. Reynolds. Words carry weight. Tyler is a good boy. He's spirited. And let's be honest, Emma doesn't always fit in." The audacity made my fists clench. Behind Karen, I noticed a shadow moving. Daniel Whitfield himself, stepping out onto the porch. The man was broad-shouldered, close-cropped hair, scars carved into his face like he'd been through hell, and walked out smirking. He carried a mug of coffee like it was a weapon. "What's this?" His voice was gravel. Karen tilted her chin toward me. "A little misunderstanding. Emma got herself tangled up at the creek, and now Mr. Reynolds is upset." I snapped. "She didn't get herself tangled. Your son tied her up like a prisoner." Daniel's gaze sharpened, pinning me. It was like being stared down by a predator. "You calling my boy a liar?" I stepped forward, heat rising in my chest. "I'm calling him dangerous. And if you don't set him straight, I'll take this to the police." A tense silence hung in the humid morning air. Karen's smile faltered completely now, her hand brushing Daniel's arm as if to calm him. But his stare never wavered. Finally, he took a slow sip of coffee, then muttered, "Call your dad." Huh? That's what he told her. My stomach turned. He knew. Daniel set the mug down on the railing, his tone low but sharp as a blade. "Mr. Reynolds, you don't want this fight. Not with me. Not with this family. Best you keep your daughter on a shorter leash." Emma's sobs from last night flashed in my head. My knuckles whitened around the doorframe. But I held my ground, voice steady. "No, Colonel. You keep your son on one." The standoff lasted a breath too long. Then Karen tugged Daniel back, hissing something under her breath. They walked away, but the weight of his stare stayed. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't going to be solved with reason. The Whitfields weren't backing down, and neither was I. The days after the confrontation were like walking across broken glass. Every time Emma left the house, I felt eyes on her. Tyler smirked from across the cul-de-sac, tossing a baseball into his glove with slow, deliberate thuds. Karen paraded around with her clipboard, whispering to neighbors on their porches. And Daniel? He was everywhere and nowhere, sometimes jogging at dawn, sometimes standing by his truck at midnight, arms crossed, as if daring me to breathe wrong. I kept Emma close, but kids crave normalcy. One evening, she begged me to let her ride her bike around the block. "Just 5 minutes, Dad. Please." Her eyes were tired, bruised from too many nights crying. Against my gut, I agreed. 5 minutes stretched to 10. Then I heard it, screeching tires, Emma's scream. I bolted outside. At the corner, Emma's bike lay twisted in the grass. Tyler stood there, holding her arm, grinning like a wolf. "Told you to stay away," he sneered. "Let her go." I roared, sprinting across the street. But before I could reach them, Daniel's truck pulled up, gravel spitting under its tires. He stepped out slow, calm, too calm. "Son," he said, voice flat, "what did I tell you about handling problems?" Tyler looked at him, proud. "Make them call their dad." Emma trembled, whispering, "Daddy." That word cut me in half. I pulled her behind me, glaring at Daniel. "This ends now. Your son assaulted my daughter, again. The police will hear about this tonight." Karen appeared from nowhere, heels clicking on the pavement, face flushed. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Mr. Reynolds. Kids play rough. You're just looking for someone to blame." "Rough?" My voice cracked. He tied her to a tree. He nearly dragged her off her bike. "That's not rough, it's criminal." Neighbors gathered, whispers buzzing. Phones came out, recording. The Whitfields weren't invincible anymore. Their control was slipping. Daniel stepped closer, his presence swallowing the street. "You want to go to the police? Fine. But understand this. You're picking a fight with a family that doesn't lose. I've dealt with men 10 times your size and buried them without blinking. You're nothing." The crowd went silent. Even the cicadas hushed. I felt my knees tremble, but then I felt Emma's tiny hand squeeze mine. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough. "Don't let him scare us, Daddy." And something inside me snapped. I squared my shoulders. "You think your Delta badge makes you untouchable? You think scaring neighbors keeps you in charge? No, Colonel. What it makes you is a bully raising another bully. And I'm done being quiet." Karen shrieked, "How dare you?" But the flashing red and blue lights cut her off. A police cruiser screeched to a stop, 2 officers stepping out. Someone in the crowd had already called. Emma buried her face in my side as the officers pushed through, demanding answers. Tyler stammered, Karen protested, Daniel loomed. But the cameras, the neighbors, the evidence, it was all there now. For the first time, I saw a crack in Daniel's armor. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The police questioned everyone right there on the street. Emma clung to me, whispering the story between sobs. The tree, the rope, Tyler's threats. Her words broke something open in the crowd. Neighbors who had kept their heads down for years began to murmur, then speak, then testify. Mrs. Clark from across the cul-de-sac said she'd seen Tyler push Emma before. Mr. Jenkins admitted he'd heard Karen warn other parents to keep their kids in line. One by one, the wall of silence cracked, and the truth spilled out. Karen tried to talk over them all, her voice shrill. "This is slander. Tyler is a good boy. We've given so much to this neighborhood." But the officers ignored her. Their attention was fixed on Daniel, whose jaw flexed like steel under strain. When they asked him if Tyler had tied Emma to that tree, he didn't answer. He just stared at me. Cold. Burning. "Colonel Whitfield, One officer said firmly, "Step back." For a second, I thought he'd lunge. But instead, he raised his hands and let out a bitter laugh. All this over kids being kids. World's gone soft. They led Tyler into the cruiser. Karen screamed, pounding the window as it drove off. Daniel didn't move. He just stood there, a soldier out of war, but still fighting a battle he couldn't win. When the street finally emptied, when the lights faded, I carried Emma inside. She sat at the kitchen table, hugging her sketchbook like a shield. "Are we safe now, Daddy?" she asked. I knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her face. "Yes, sweetheart. We're safe. And no one will ever hurt you again. Not while I'm here." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from fear. The weeks that followed changed everything. Tyler was charged with juvenile assault and ordered into counseling. Karen's grip on the HOA shattered. The board voted her out after years of resentment finally boiled over. Without her iron smile and Daniel's shadow looming, the neighborhood felt lighter. As for Daniel, he left. Word spread he'd gone back to some private security job overseas, unable to stomach the disgrace of being beaten by a suburban dad. I saw him once, the day he drove off. His eyes locked on mine, cold and unreadable, but he said nothing. Just a nod, whether of respect or warning, I'll never know. Emma healed, slowly. She still avoided the creek at first, but one golden afternoon, she asked if we could go back. We walked together, hand in hand. She sat under that oak tree and opened her sketchbook. This time, she drew not just the branches and the creek, but the two of us, side by side, unbroken. I realized then that the fight wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about showing my daughter that courage doesn't come from muscles or medals. It comes from refusing to back down when it matters most. As the sun dipped low, Emma leaned against me, her voice soft. "You didn't let him scare us, Daddy." I smiled, pulling her close. "Never will, kiddo. Never will." And in that quiet moment, the weight lifted. The Whitfields were gone. The fear was gone. All that remained was us, father and daughter, finally free.